Yeah, welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Just a couple of your messages. And Kwame Sapon says, if Section 35 only affects stealing when the state incurs a loss, can it not be said that this law was passed by Parliament knowing very well that most often politically exposed persons and their cronies will be the beneficiaries? Aish, good thief, you are on your own. That's Kwame. Then just a couple more, let me share them with you. George asked the question, in this ASEAN matter, what happens to the argument about the net present value of the outstanding money? That is also important for me. And then Frank Anderson says, this should be the best outcome for all concerned. Atuesian did not steal from the public purse. He misappropriated bailout funds advanced to him by the government through the regulator to stabilize the financial market. That is different from those who dip their fingers into the public purse. Besides, he's not a repeat offender. So let's take it. Then this one asking a question and saying that, look, the view out there by most journalists that the accused persons have been freed is not accurate. Only 2 accused persons were freed. Atuesian is not freed. Of course, that has become known now. And then on the plea bargain, I was reading the exceptions and asking why is it that defilement, rape, robbery, all of them, you can't go and plea bargain and also get away. And I'm being informed that, in fact, when that law was being made, it is the Attorney General who went to Parliament to, insist on the fact that there was a need to have exceptions because there are certain crimes that you should not, be condoning. If you are raping and you are doing those things, we should not allow you to pay and go free. And the Hansard of the day has the record that the Attorney General argued strenuously against the ranking member of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament before a vote was taken to include exceptions to the plea bargain. Well, the popular view at the time going round was that certain offenses should not be allowed for plea bargain, including murder. Right. Now, let's go to the special prosecutor, and we'll see how we can deal with that quickly because there's also that important matter of the confession of Esiedu Nketia, and he has confirmed the tape that is what it is. There's nothing wrong with the tape. It's what he said. So, must there be any implications for that confession that they were taking an empty suit when they knew that that is what it was? Here is Haruna Idrisu, minority leader in Parliament, expressing his disgust at what the Special Prosecutor and his officers have suffered in 16 months.
The matter of the Special Prosecutor, and I'm happy Chairman for Constitutional Legal is here. There are major issues that requires his attention. I've just asked for an email. Office of Special Prosecutor, you put that young man there. You haven't determined his service, conditions of service. He hasn't been paid. Some appointments have been done, which themselves raises question whether a board was aware or not aware. Chairman, you have to probe further the happenings at the Office of Special Prosecutor. He hasn't been paid for 16 months, and you are coming to lay one report. We won't accept any report being laid here. Your commitment to fight corruption begins with your attitude to independent constitutional bodies like the Special Prosecutor, who has been denied salary. Can any of you live without salary? And you don't pay, you expect him to work and to combat corruption. You want to lay a report.
The minority leader speaks. It's good that he has his ears on the ground, because at the committee level, it came up And just yesterday, we invited the Minister of Finance, and he was represented by no mean a person, by the Chief Director, and we have resolved the issues, and we have incorporated that, the issue that you raised, that, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Haruna would agree with me that once the issue that he is talking about is already incorporated in the report, he must not be in a rush to actually talk about it when we have not laid a report. So on this note, if Mr. Speaker grants me the leave and the indulgence of the House, I may want to lay the items 5 together.
You're welcome back. And we know that the Office of the Special Prosecutor has been meant to do a lot of good for this country. Unfortunately, since the law was passed in 2017, and then Martin Amidu, the first Special Prosecutor to be appointed, problems. And then he checks out, makes all sorts of accusations, and then gets out. A new one is brought in, and how many months they don't have salary, what exactly is going on. If you are just joining us, my guest, Suleiman Abrahima, Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa. Mary Ada is Programs Manager, Ghana Integrity Initiative. Daniel Krang is lawyer and author of legal texts. Also, Bobby Banson, the two of them are in the studio. He is also a lawyer and author of this very fresh book, Civil Litigation in the High Courts. And Alfred Tuayebua is Deputy Attorney General and Deputy Minister for Justice. So what exactly is going on? Let's begin with Mary Ada. You at the anti-corruption organization keep your ears to the ground a lot more on these matters. When Martin Amidu was going through all the trouble, it was you guys who were, keeping the public, updated and informed about the goings on there. What is going on with the Special Prosecutor? What do you know?
Let me say that what is going on is just unacceptable, it's disappointing, and again, you would see that government is doing what we have come to say they do more, stick to the fact more than acting on them. The rhetoric is what we are seeing. The Office of the Special Prosecutors Regulations 2018, if you look at it, it gives powers of recruitment, who should be recruited and how they should be recruited. And even it spells out their conditions of service and their pay. That's what the regulation does. If you look at the scheme of service, that's 14. And then sections 14, the 15, the 16. Even hours of work, it spells all that out. And their salary. So, in this case, what is supposed to be done is a negotiation between the Office of the Special Prosecutor and the Ministry of Finance. So what is happening is just that the Minister of Finance made some proposals, I believe, which have not been accepted because per the law of the office, it is important for them to ensure that we are remunerating the officers who are recruited there to do their work. Unfortunately, there have not been agreement on this, and this has taken that long. And it doesn't even span this Special Prosecutor's tenure. It started when Martin Amidu was in office. And it's unfortunate that the Minister of Finance has not ensured that this has been resolved. And so you go to the office and the few people who have been recruited have not been paid, just like if the news came out. It's only the Madame Lampe, the deputy, who at the time she was recruited because she had worked also at the Attorney General's office and had her scheme, all right, who was paid. So it is an issue we need to bring conclusion to, because the labor law as well has been infringed. Because it says if you work wages for weekly, you should be paid. And if you work on a monthly basis, you should be remunerated. So we don't know what is happening. We know that in institutions like the Yoko, the Shragis, and others, everybody is paid. And we understand that the conditions which were spelled out for the OSP was even below what is pertaining in some of the state institutions. And then I say, if we want to fight corruption, we need to remunerate the people who are fighting it. We need investigators who will do this work, who will do it dispassionately, who will do it not looking back, who will do it so motivated because they know the government is rewarding them for the work they do. Unfortunately, this is not the case again. So it's like government has decided to add on to the bureaucracy, setting up an institution, and then allowing it to crawl or cripple it by not giving those who have been appointed their due. Even I understand that even allowances are not anywhere, they are not given. So people are working and not giving any money. So we don't know how government believes these people should do their work and then do it well. And we know again that there are so many cases these people are investigating. And what could happen if people try to motivate them on the wrong side? It could lead to defeat in the fight against corruption, because people would then be bribing them to get away with issues. And we don't want that to happen. But unfortunately, that is what is happening currently.
As we understand, there's something else, because their appropriation is being, Parliament is not sort of amenable, as in the minority, has sounded a note of caution that if the Finance Ministry don't do the right things, they are not going to approve the appropriation. As we understand, if they suggest that they will not approve, and they will not approve that for the judiciary as well. My fear is that once there is one item that is not approved, then the whole appropriation doesn't get approved. Sort of the whole budget sort of doesn't get approved. And that will put the government in a difficult situation. From what you know so far, and the documentation that have gone to Parliament that have been leaked, of course, from Parliament to the media, particularly multimedia, how do you propose that this be resolved so that, you know, we don't get into a very difficult situation?
I believe the Minister of Finance has been in this situation before, just in the last budget, where appropriation was delayed and we had issues with the e-list. So this is a big lesson for him going forward, that this issue must be resolved. It's unthinkable to think that there is just a one item in the OSP's office which has not been resolved. And it's for the two to come to some agreement. And I think there is no discussion about what has been put in place. The regulations spelled out what should happen. So the Minister of Finance should, as quickly as possible, meet with the OSP and see what they can do. And something, let me add that what the minority has said is very unique and informative as well, that they would not agree to passing appropriation. As to whether they would have the numbers to do so is another issue. But then it is good that they have taken a stance on this, and it is only the right course to go. So the Minister of Finance should, as quickly as possible, see to it that this issue is addressed. It would help in bringing an end to this long dispute that they have had going on, but it would also then engender gain for the fight against corruption, because we would know that the people we have put in place to ensure that they do the right thing in investigating and prosecuting have the needed resources to do so, and then they would not be coerced in any way to go the wrong way.
So, Sule, what's your understanding of what is going on? And often when these things have come up, it is civil society that have sort of advocated for the right things to be done, particularly for these institutions that are meant to fight corruption in this country.
Samson, I think it's quite a very disturbing development. We all celebrated the establishment of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, and indeed celebrated the appointment of Mr. Martin Amidu as the first Special Prosecutor in 2018. And we had no doubt that at the time that this was an establishment that was going to help deal with the canker of corruption in our country. Unfortunately, since its establishment, since the appointment of Martin Amidu till date, it appears that the office is yet to really establish itself and pursue the objectives that we all hoped it would pursue. But having said that, there are a few questions to ask. Is it that the government of the day, President Akufo-Addo, basically wanted to establish something to attract the applause of the people and in actual sense cripple it from doing the work that it has to do? Because again, people have argued that indeed if a president wants to fight corruption and truly empowers the Attorney General to do that, maybe we may not need a different entity as the Office of the Special Prosecutor to do that. But be it as it may, we have it, and we expect it to work. Now, again, it's quite curious to say that some people have been working for the last 16 months and haven't been paid and have not been complaining until perhaps now, and even that complaint is not public. It's the media that has made us aware that these people have been working for the last 16 months. I think it was President Kufuor who once said that, well, people in the public and civil service pretend to work and government also pretends to pay them. So are we having a situation where they are there, they are not being paid, but they are pretending to do the work that they are supposed to do, and the state is also looking on? And Samson, my final input on this subject is the fact that, like you rightly said, quite often it is civil society that would step in, make all the noise, advocate for the right things to be done. But we have a peculiar situation here, because the Office of the Special Prosecutors Board is chaired by, my good friend Linda Ofori-Kwafo, who is a well-respected civil society actor in the anti-corruption space. The question that I ask is, while all these things have been going on, and in fact, she was the chair under Martin Amidu and was reappointed to the board and was made again the chair. I think that I expect to hear a bit more from Linda. I expect to see more action from her, because at some point we in civil society may be accused of being hypocritical. In other words, doing the same things that governments do. When we are given positions of responsibility, we end up basically complaining about the things that we ought to be doing. So my advice to Linda would be, if she is doing her best as the chair of the board to ensure that the organization is working and is meeting a very strong stumbling block on the part of government, the right thing to do is to quit, just as we demand of our ministers and other appointees who may not be delivering sometimes as a result of certain impediments. Rather than be there, and those of us in civil society blaming the institution for not working, meanwhile we have a colleague there who is the chair of the board. And if you look at the functions of the board, it includes making sure that the Office of the Special Prosecutor works efficiently. And so I think it is important that we highlight that particular part of the involvement of civil society in terms of the board, and not just involvement, but chairing the board. I would want to see more action on the part of Linda, and if it is not working, I think that it is better that she quits, so that when we are complaining and advocating, our voices would be seen as legitimate.
All right. Now, Bobby, there are those who are asking, why should, an office. That's actually, we understood from the lengthy back and forth between Martin Amidu and the Jubilee House, you know, after he did that his corruption assessment on the Ejapa, you know, matter. It's supposed to have at least 200 staff. As we understand, they barely can boast of 20. And what they have now, since they have not been paid for all this while, they cannot even think about seeking to recruit extra people, because you need to persuade those who are there now, you know, to keep faith in hope that things will happen well. When the law itself was passed in 2017, we started complaining, where are the regulations? They need the regulations to be able to work. Now, 2 regulations. Office of the Special Prosecutor Operation Regulations 2018 was passed. And then Office of the Special Prosecutor Regulations 2018 was also passed. I'm looking at this particular regulation and the terms and conditions of service, issues of welfare, issues of housing, issues. In fact, the office, it says the office shall provide official accommodation for a senior employee, and that employee shall pay rent for that accommodation at the prevailing government rate. And it's talking about means of transport for all of them. Of course, we know that it's a very sensitive place. So you must make sure that you don't leave room for them to be tempted and to fall into all of these things. When you hear this news, how do you process it?
It's like every person that has spoken before me said, it's sad, it's disheartening. I was wondering, because I've had the opportunity to work in my private practice with the office, for a client, represent the client, and I was shocked to hear that these people that looked motivated, they were doing their work, they have not been paid for 16 months. It's either the love they have for the country or something else. Because, for example, the OSP himself was a very successful private practitioner and academician. And he had left all of those to be in this work, and for 16 months, especially when the law sets out exactly what they are entitled to.
Right. And
it goes to say, you know, if you look at SHRAJ, if you look at the NCCE, if you look at the information department, these are very essential state entities that also suffer some of these things. And so as a country, it's not only about those that are in the executive, qua-executive, that we should be interested in taking care of their welfare. In any event, those people that we actually focus on taking care of their welfare are the ones that bring us a lot of alleged corrupt cases. Now, the institution that we have set up to investigate, prosecute, and save money for the state, it just shows our priorities. And it's also sad that, you know, the OSP office, because of the nature of the work, cannot come out public. Imagine the minority leader had not said it. It's this. I read, I don't know if you come to that, but I read one of the letters by Mr. Amidu, and I'm told he's also owed for some of the months he worked.
That's right.
Where he was saying that he thinks that the reason why payment had not been done is due to what he termed, if I read right, unconstitutional appointments, where he's challenging.
He actually calls it corrupt process by the OSP itself.
You see, where he's also saying that, well, you have not been paid because you've not gone through the proper channel for the appointment. I mean, these are things that do not augur well for the office in itself. Because, I mean, if we are saying this is the office that must be the police, that must check us, then they themselves must be above some of these defects. And so, as soon as possible, the powers that be must ensure that this is not repeated. And I think that they must be motivated by the state. Otherwise, they fall prey to be motivated by other persons. You have situations in Mexico, for instance, where some of these officers have ended up doing exactly the opposite of what they were originally established to do, because the people that they were supposed to fight against saw the gap in their financing and they decided to finance it in a certain way. And so you cannot go after them if they are financing you. So we should avoid that situation.
Martin Amidu speaks of what he says, unconstitutional appointment made by the OSP before the board was appointed in June 2022. And that these letters of appointment do not contain the salary levels of the appointees, do not state that they were appointed by the president, and that the letters, he quotes portions of the letters, that the letters begin with square brackets showing a variation of type. Then he quotes offer of appointment, as we are pleased to offer you appointment, with effect from 2022 on the following terms and conditions, I to X or XI. Please return the duplicate of this letter. When he says that unconstitutional appointment made before the board was appointed and do not contain salary levels of appointees and do not state that they were appointed by the president and that, in his own writing, you find that he says that the letter contains terms and conditions from I, then he mentions to X or XII. Sorry. It puts me in a bit of a confusion what exactly he's talking about. And I look at that also to the effect that the regulations contain all the conditions. So what is his problem? He says certain persons have not been referred to Public Services Commission and the rest of them. What do you know? In the security services, do they refer these things to Public Services Commission?
Well, I think we would all be limited to address this because, unfortunately, he did not attach a copy of such appointment letters for us to see what he actually meant by these things. But be that as it may, whatever motivated these comments that he made, if indeed there was, so you asked yourself whether legally every single appointment must be approved by the board. And so if the board is not in place, does it mean that the OSP, if that was the purpose of the law, would be the only person working in that office? And he has to wait till the board is constituted before he can have investigators. It means that technically you are handicapping him until the board is I doubt if that would be the purpose or intent of the legislation.
He himself had done some appointments.
That was what I was coming to say.
Because the basic principle is that, like promoting a company, you will promoters of a company, you will appoint and then seek ratification later.
When the board is constituted. So I like again, he's not been able to display a copy of that for us to follow what he is saying, to say that, okay, there was some defect in it. But be that as it may, I think we are all this, the clarion call is for the whichever powers that be. I was happy, Leonido, the chair of the Constitutional Committee,
yes,
Anyemedu, said that said that whatever ought to be done is being done, and that there have been discussions between the
16 months
finance ministry and the necessary agencies to make sure that this is ratified or ratified as it were. And so we will look forward to seeing what the state will do, because this will show how they are committed to these fights. And the threat by the minority that if that is not done, they will not approve certain. It's also disheartening because then he mentioned judiciary. At the end of the day, if you don't cripple other state agencies because you want one done. And so they should also manage these threats, because at the end of the day, if these are constitutional bodies that are independent of whatever political.
And Daniel, there are some who are speculating that maybe Special Prosecutor is not doing what, certain political circles expected that it will do. So that the typical thing of prosecuting previous regime, and when it comes to politically exposed persons,
yes,
prosecuting people of the previous regime. But this is a Special Prosecutor who says, it doesn't matter who is involved, we'll prosecute you. So they are going after people who are in the present regime. The ABJ, PPA boss matter. We know of the customs issue, the Sir John issue, which they are working on an appeal. We know of also the NDA, that's the Northern Development Authority matter, which they have also frozen the payment that would have gone through, which was said to be a corrupt process. the Jabbing DC nominee who is in trouble, all because of Special Prosecutor is taking care of these things. It could be one way of gauging some displeasure,
yes,
and some tussle that is going on. How do you appreciate that?
Thank you very much. It is a reasonable assumption in that we cannot expect to think that the NPP set up, or the NPP government set up the Office of the Special Prosecutor to go after political opponents. That is not something we can think about. I believe that the establishment of the office was one of our national commitments to fight corruption. And so the corruption must be fought at all fronts and in all spheres. It does not matter where the corruption occurs. So that if the corruption occurs in this present government, we should expect the office to prosecute it and to go after them as hard as they would go after any political opponents. So now for those who think that the present government is probably experiencing the effect of a boomerang, if I should put it that way, that you have put up an office to do a thing and you end up being prosecuted yourself. It is a reasonable one, but I think if it is true, then it's very unfortunate. The office must be left to work as it ought to. It is a statutory or a constitutional body, as we have all said, and they have a mandate. And the mandate cannot be pursued without adequate remuneration and logistics. When I hear this issue of the special prosecutor crying for salary, I liken it to a situation where you ask a hungry prosecutor to chase, arrest, and prosecute somebody who is carrying food and water. You are hungry. So when you come to my house to arrest me, I'll just serve you and you sleep. And you leave me to go scot-free. We must get serious with some of these issues because they strike so hard at our overall commitment towards the fight against corruption. If we are unable to resource the office as an independent body, then we may as well think of, scrapping it all together so that we revest the power of fighting against corruption in the Attorney General, so that we don't have the duplicity or a second office like we do. Because if you take away the power of fighting against corruption and vest it in a separate independent body, and you don't resource it, you haven't done anything. And if I may advise those who have the power to change the situation of the office, I would say that it is not enough to set up an office. It is not enough to create an office and put people in there. All of us are human beings with families. So if you put somebody as a special prosecutor or an officer in that office without salary, without remuneration, then you are exposing them to also practice corruption. Because just as the minority leader said, can any one of us here be without salary for 16 months? It is certainly no. And when I watched carefully Anyenini, right?
Yes.
His response, he could not deny, except that he wanted to put across that steps are being taken.
To be done.
Yet it will be done. That is kind of an admission that what is being circulated is true.
Right.
So it is really an unfortunate situation that we have.
As we understand, Bobby, briefly, then we'll take a break and come to the next issue. The question that Martin raises over this, that there were no board approvals, they've denied it.
Okay.
That cannot be true.
Okay.
And that it cannot actually happen, that the special prosecutor will get up and decide to make appointments without recourse to the board. For those that the law says the special prosecutor needs board advice, of course, and we know what advice means and whether it's binding or not, it can go on. The tussle is now between the office and the finance ministry, where Martin began the process, and people who are being picked from that job, they are not picking neophytes. They are picking people who have experience. So they could get the best of an investigator or a CID person from the CID to come to their place. So the special prosecutor point is that don't make their circumstance worse off. If anything at all, follow the regulations, the conditions it provides for them. Otherwise, it appears that there had been a proposal to give them some remuneration, but which is not the best.
Okay.
And that is where the tussle is.
Okay.
Otherwise, they may have been paid.
Okay. Because I see when you go to their office, you see some of the investigators who we knew from their roles with the Ghana Police Service, some with IOCO.
Sort of they get the best of the best.
Of the best. And so if you are bringing them here with all the extra risk associated with this office, then it is not fair for you to expect that they take the same remuneration or benefit, particularly when this one has been set out by law.
Right.
And so the question now becomes whether the finance ministry will now adjust to, and that is where the tussle is. Then maybe they should pay them what they've agreed to pay them once they negotiate on the difference.
What if they accept that and then they don't get it?
I mean, the OSP is a lawyer.
And they want to see that in the security services, the ranks are there, and the ranks determine the pay. So if you have somebody in Yoko, why should they get better than somebody in
OSP,
an even more specialized office?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with him, and I think his people deserve. Like I said, I have had the benefit of engaging them, and they are highly motivated group of people who want to do their work to them. They understand the import of their role, and so we should, as a state, take care of them.
Okay, let's get your last 1 minute. That's what I'll do again, and then we take a break and return to the confessions of Esiedu Nketia and what implications it should have. So, Mary, this is an institution that we are becoming excited about by the work that they are doing, and as I mentioned, they have stopped the alleged illegal payment of about 10 million cedis. 4 persons, are being charged for the NDA matter. They have stopped the illegal advance ruling, or what you call increased advance ruling, which has increased revenue mobilization and corrected illegal auction sales of cars at the GRA. From my checks, the revenue has increased about 12%. They have these cases that they are pursuing, the PPA matter, which some of you came together to make sure that Shraj dealt with it. The jabbing DC nominee, they are looking at that. If you check from the reports they gave us, they are investigating over 80 cases, which are supposed to be at different levels. There's a Sir John matter that is also there, among other things. Should these matters, how long can these matters be allowed to continue without they having their pay? Hi, Mary.
Please, could you come again?
Okay, so bottom line, how long can we allow for this situation to persist?
I think the appetite for allowing this to persist is very low. Because we, just like the other gentleman mentioned, it's like we are putting a bone in front of a dog, and that is not tenable. We need to, as soon as yesterday, bring some conclusion to this matter, so that if there are any other issues, we could be speaking to those instead of issues of salary. They should not be spoken about.
Your boss chairs the board. Sule says it's not good that she's silent about what is going on.
And so I am speaking from the point of view of the Ghana Integrity Initiative and civil society, that this is not acceptable. And as Sule mentioned, the board chair would definitely, she has done some things which I'm not the right person to be speaking to. She will definitely make that call. And I believe that, as Sule has mentioned, she would, because in the past she has done some of those by engaging civil society to alert them on what has been happening. There is a lot happening which we may not be aware of, but I'm very sure that a lot has happened behind the scenes. It's just that's why I mentioned that the Minister of Finance must, as a matter of agency, deal with this as soon as possible.
All right.
Not even from the point of view of Parliament, but from the point of view of their own commitment, as Honorable Chiayabua said. They decided that they wanted to fight corruption by this route. And so if we are fighting it by this route, by instituting the institution, then we must necessarily do the right thing by
thank you.
them.
Thank you very much. Sule, what would you also say in a minute?
Well, I would say, I think Mary was saying that the appetite for it is not much. I would say there's no appetite at all to have the current condition perpetuate itself. I think that we have two options. Either we resource it to work, or we take the processes necessary to scrap it. Because there's no point in establishing such a wonderful institution. If you look at the OSP Act, you know, the functions. This is an institution that if, as a state, as a country, as a government, we resource it and allow it to implement its functions, a lot will be achieved in terms of the fight against corruption, which is our biggest problem.
Alhaj Suleiman says that why do we set up a young and enthusiastic person like Kisie Jabing for ridicule? Are we not dampening the spirit of people in public service? If we behave this way, Kisie is just working out of passion. I will quit if I were him. Would you advise him to quit?
Well, if he continues this way, that's the only way, the only option. Because at some point, if you are there and you are still complaining, people may not believe you. Because how do you convince me that you've been working for the last 16 months on your own money, the money that you had saved under this current economic situation? At some point, it will become unbelievable. And if it continues, the right thing to do is to quit, so that those who set it up would either...
Martin left, his successor should also quit. Then what? What are we doing with the office?
Scrap it.
Well, it means that the people who set it up didn't intend that it should work. And therefore, it's better that we don't have such an institution as a country, because whatever it is, some resources are being expended on the establishment.
That's right.
We continue to resources without any benefit from it.
Thank you very much. We take a quick break. When we return, what implications ought there to be on the back of the confessions of Esiedun Ketia about taking an empty petition to the Supreme Court over the election results of 2020. We'll be right back.